Do you feel that politicians are effective?
Let me take a deep breath on camera. I think they can be when they have clear motives. When you ask me about politics, diehard Democrat, do I think that Mayor Fisher has been effective? I think he has. Do I think other politicians have been effective? I think they have. I think they can only do so much. David James and I always have conversations, and it's not the politicians' community that we're worried about, it's ours. Mayor Fisher and Chief Conrad can't come downtown and change what's going on in the west end of Louisville. Only we could do that. Do I think at some level that politicians could be effective to implement change by using their voices? Absolutely. Do I think we've had some times when they haven't? Absolutely. I want to get past the point where people use their voice when it's convenient for them. I want people to speak out about injustice at all times, regardless to whether it's black, white, Jews, Muslims, whoever. I want them to speak out about it at all times, not just when it's convenient, not just when it's popular, not just when it's election time. I want people to speak truth to power when they're in a position to change the game for people. And we live in a city of compassion. I think that the game needs to change, and it has for the most part in some areas. We're still struggling, and we're a long way from where we need to be. But I think effective policies have been in place for us to be successful so far.
Okay. Okay. It's been brought up, in the film. We have a section just devoted to hip hop, and there's a lot of talk in the media about the use of the N-word, So how do you feel about the use of the N-word in rap music today?
I just don't think it should be used, period. I mean, that's a word that I really try to make sure that the people I love and care about do not use around me. And one of the things that disturbs me the greatest is to see people who don't look like me using that word around people who look like me, and people who look like me being okay with the use of that word. When it comes to the hip hop culture, I think, we're degrading to our own race. We're degrading to women. And if we want the city to change, the things that you put into your body and consciousness, listening to that just puts us in a position not to be successful. So I don't think it should be used at any point in time, regardless.
Okay. How do you feel about Colin Kaepernick's stance?
I take a knee with him. I would take a knee with him, and I think one of the greatest days of my life was when I was on the waterfront for a Me Too movement, and I watched Vanessa Cantley and Sadiq Reynolds and them take a knee up front in front of probably 10,000 people. So I would take a knee with him, and people felt like his stand was disrespecting the flag or disrespecting the country. His stand was to bring attention to the police brutality and the murder of people who look just like me. So I would take a knee with him tomorrow, because I think what he did was morally right, nobly right, and you have to look at the fact that when he made a decision that was right, people attacked his character, people attacked his livelihood, and even though it looked like he was losing on the front end, he won on the back end, and so I would take a knee with him.
Okay, speaking of that, spinning off of that, what can police do to improve, or what can officers do to prevent police brutality?
Well, you know me, I'm like pro-police, and I've worked really closely with LMPD since 2005, and I've had these conversations off and on over the years. And one of the things that I've watched officers that I know do is they became willing to have conversations with the community. We have a new unit called community policing, and all they do is form relationships and build bridges in the community. They're on the ground talking to people. I have police officers who become willing to mentor my kids. and I say kids, but these are young adults, but police officers being willing to mentor our young adults, expose them to other cultures and different things, and just being compassionate. So I've watched the police over the last 10 years really change the way they do business. It's no longer business as usual. They knew they had to come up with some other things, and I think the community policing unit was brilliant. I got kids who got police officers as mentors, and if you would ever told me that some of my young African American boys and men would be open to having police officers as mentors, I would have probably shook my head no. So, I think the police are doing better. Could they do much, much better? Absolutely they could. Anytime I witness one of our young African American boys being treated disrespectful by the police, I say something. And I think as a community as a whole, we don't want to obstruct justice. We don't want to stop the police from doing their job. But if I ride down Broadway and 4 young black boys are laying on the ground, it's cold outside, and I come back an hour later and they're still laying out there, I got a problem with that. And I think too many people have been silent when they could have used their voice.
So on the flip side, like you kind of said it, but what can minorities do to decrease the act of police brutality? So what I'm saying is, I went to go see the movie The Hate You Give. Have you seen that yet? Minorities, we know it's a problem. I don't feel that every black that's gotten shot it's deserved to be shot, multiple times. So some of that stuff is just ridiculous. But on the flip side of the coin, what do you feel that blacks or minorities can do to?
I think that we experience racial profiling more than any other race on the planet. I think when you get pulled over, even if you know it's a bogus, they're just messing with you, still comply. I always tell people to comply with LMPD, and if you got a problem with them, they have an integrity unit. I think as a African American person in this community, I think when we get mistreated by the police, we don't go say anything because we don't think anything would be done. And so I would challenge the people who have had bad experiences with LMPD to go through the proper channels. Change can't take place as long as we quiet. I've been pulled over. I didn't feel like it was warranted. People talk crazy, but then you make that phone call, to the major in the district. In the first district is Eric Johnson. He's very open to complaints. Recently I had a kid up on 4th Street and they had jacked him up and did some stuff, and I was very angry, and I called Eric Johnson, and he called me back within like 30 minutes. It wasn't LMPD, it was the sheriff's department. So that's a whole nother layer of onion that we had to pull. And I just believe that it's a level of accountability on our parts. Everybody's not going to stop committing crimes, but if you know you're wrong, and they say put your hands up, put your hands up. Own it. Don't be disrespectful, because here's what I tell my young people every day. In a war with LMPD, you are going to lose every time. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you're going to lose. But if you feel like you've been mistreated or somebody's treated you bad, I believe in the chain of command. I believe in walking those people to LMPD headquarters to talk to the people that we talk to. I've never been turned away by the police when I have a legitimate complaint. Some people just don't like the police because they don't like them. And just because you don't like them, it doesn't give you a right to disrespect them. And so, once again, I say, in a war with them, you're going to lose every time. So we have to be better about our choices. We have to be better about the way we do business. And we have to stay out of their way. They're not going to knock on your door and just mess with you.
One last question. A little different. I want to place it somewhere, though. But when you do think about progression in America, can you touch on the change that we do have after King?
I think Martin Luther King died so we could do some of the stuff we do now. We get to go in restaurants and we get to go places that we couldn't go in the 50s. He actually died for us to be free. And I think at some point in time, some of us are free, but I think we're not free till everybody's free. And there's a lot of people still in bondage, self-inflicted pain, still in bondage. So I think we've made a lot of progress. but there's much, much, much more to do. And I think in order for us to really live out his dream, we're going to have to come together as a nation. It can no longer be us versus them. It's going to have to be we, and that's going to have to include everybody.